Hello and welcome to this broadcast. The government has just appointed Michael Patra as the new RBI Deputy Governor. Ira Dugal joins now on the phone line for more on this. Ira, what do you make of this?
Niraj, good morning. I think a long-awaited appointment. Acharya had said he's stepping down in June, and now we finally have a deputy governor who is the fourth deputy governor, but it is being assumed that he will be given charge of monetary policy and that division. Now, Michael Patra is well known to the markets. He's the RBI executive director. He is the one who guides monetary policy at the central bank. In any case, he's in charge of the research department. So the market is very familiar with his views. There was a time when Patra was known as the quintessential inflation hawk. He's a central bank lifer. He surprised everybody, though, in February of 2009 when he was among the first to turn and say that we need to become growth supportive in our monetary policy approach. At that time, a lot of people questioned why he had done that because the new governor had taken charge as well. But as it played out, Patra was proven right because we saw a very steep slide in growth in the economy, as you very well know. Now, Patra, in the last few policies, has actually been advocating both fiscal and monetary support to the economy. He has suggested that monetary policy has done the heavy lifting so far. In at least the last two policies, he has spoken of the need for fiscal support to the economy. In the December policy, he again turned and this time around said that they need to watch for inflation. And of course, that proved to be the right call as well, given the 7% plus inflation print that we saw. So, there are reasons to, in some ways, cheer Michael Patra's appointment because, he's somebody who the market knows. He's somebody who's well-versed with central banking. He's not an unknown commodity, nor are his views unknown to the market. Having said that, there is legitimate critique as well because Michael Patra does head the research department at the Reserve Bank of India. And as we have said and others have said, the research department has gone wrong in both predicting first the inflation slide, the extent of the inflation slide, and then predicting the extent of the growth slide. So there is some soul searching, so to speak, to be done by the research department, and that rolls up to Michael Patra. I just want to briefly mention what this means for monetary policy. Remember, the DG who comes in is a part of the Monetary Policy Committee, the 6-member Monetary Policy Committee, but Patra is already on the MPC. So Patra's appointment doesn't change the balance of the MPC. It is the appointment of the ED who will take Patra's place that will change the balance of monetary policy. So that's where it stands. Just one last point, which I think is important from an institutional perspective. The last few DG appointments for monetary policy DG have come from the outside. In some ways, that was sending a message that people who had come up through the ground from the bottom up at the central bank were capped at an ED position. That's not great for institutional morale. By pushing Michael Patra into the DG position, you sort of send a signal as well, which is that if there are people who have come up through the central bank's ranks and are worthy of the DG position, they will definitely get it. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Ira, just one quick, and I think Aditya Nar is also with us, but Ira, quick view. I mean, challenges for the new deputy governor?
Well, I think the first challenge is the data point that we got yesterday and the data point we got just before that. Inflation at 7.3%, GDP growth expected at 5% for the full year. What does the central bank do? Should it keep cutting rates? Remember, the last pause was said to be temporary, but I believe that until the MPC sees sort of a clear roadmap for inflation coming down to 4%. And here I would like to say that Michael Patra would probably be someone who looks to bring inflation down to the midpoint of 4%. And, he will probably look for clear signs of that happening before he's willing to restart interest rate cuts. Of course, unless there is some further sort of adverse impact on the growth side. So balancing the growth-inflation dynamics, certainly the biggest challenge, monetary policy transmission. Also something that is well within the ambit of the monetary policy DG would remain a challenge as well. And then, of course, there are multiple other issues that the Indian economy will grapple with in the next 12-odd months, which is how to revive private sector investment, how to ensure that bank lending rates are in sync with policy rates. All of those are challenges that Patra will certainly be dealing with.
Aditya Nair also with us. Aditya, quick thought on the appointment firstly, and in the wake of what's happening currently, especially after the print that we got yesterday, what next for the new Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India? Aditi, can you hear me?
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Aditi. Yeah.
So I certainly think that appointing Dr. Patra as the Deputy Governor is going to ensure a lot of continuity as far as the monetary policy making is concerned. So we welcome his appointment, and I think given his long experience with the Monetary Policy Committee as well, certainly this is going to be very beneficial as far as the overall monetary policy management is concerned. And in addition to continuity, I think what he brings to the table is also a lot of flexibility. So typically in terms of, when the central bank says or the NPC says that they're data dependent, I certainly think that he brings in a lot of flexibility. As things change, he is willing to, change what he thinks the course of monetary policy action should be. And he shares his views, quite frankly, in the minutes as well. So overall, I think this is a very good choice and very beneficial as far as the overall monetary policy framework is concerned. And certainly now we look forward to the new person who will be joining the MPC in his place and seeing what his or her views end up being. As far as yesterday's print is concerned, certainly it was much higher than even what we were expecting. Our forecast had been 6.7%, so well higher than that. And now we need to see how quickly vegetable prices normalize. That's really the key question. And that is something which is outside the ambit of the MPC or the RBI. Looks like we're in for a fairly long pause right now. I think that's the best guess that we have at this point in time.
Aditi, good morning. Ira joining in as well. I think one of the questions being asked was that, the new DG coming in may or may not change the balance within the MPC. Two short questions in that regard. One is that now, of course, the balance shifts based on who comes as ED and replaces Michael Patra. But also the committee, except for a few instances, has been fairly sort of consensus-driven, or at least tends to have similar sort of analysis, except for a few standout cases.
So, my response to that would be that although we do end up getting unanimous voting fairly often, when we read the Monetary Policy Committee's minutes, we do get a good sense of the differing views and the thought processes of the different FPC members. So I would imagine that there is still a fair bit of debate and a fair bit of diversity in the views, but consensus tends to get reached in terms of what the policy action should be. That doesn't mean that we don't have diversity as far as the individual thought processes are concerned. So definitely now the new person who comes in, who I would imagine possibly will be from the RBI itself, please correct me if I'm wrong, what they bring to the table in terms of their views and, the flavor that they would bring to the MPC minutes that we end up seeing as outsiders will definitely be very welcome.
No, absolutely. The ED will probably indeed be from within the ranks as well. Aditi, as you were saying, yes, there's continuity that Dr. Patra brings. Yes, there's predictability in some ways as well because the market knows him. Yet there's justifiable criticism for the RBI's research department, which goes into Dr. Patra, which is that they need to work on their forecasting, perhaps. We've got both errors on the inflation forecasting and the growth forecasting side that they need to contend with.
So, Ira, let me put it this way. I am also one of the forecasters who, oftentimes will get it wrong. I mean, there's no harm in being frank. I think what happens is, and I certainly think this is true for the RBI's forecasting over the recent past, that particularly with inflation, it's the sudden spikes and the dips which are difficult to predict. And I certainly find that with my own forecasting as well, that, broadly we know that there will be a food price shock at some point in time every year or every 2 years. But in advance, knowing the exact timing of that is something which is terribly difficult to predict. When our onion prices suddenly go out of hand. If you ask me today to predict when we'll get the next onion price shock, sitting here today, I know it will happen at some point. But it's very difficult to call those inflection points as far as the CPI inflation is concerned. And unfortunately, the way that our CPI basket is designed, I'm not saying the design is wrong, but the fact is that a small spike in vegetable prices causes a disproportionately large impact on the headline CPI inflation. And our vegetable prices do tend to be extremely volatile. Averages tend to be fairly low. So if you look at the average vegetable price inflation over the last 5 or 7 years, it may not be meaningful at all. but within every year we get these massive spikes and corrections which are seasonal. But at times that there end up being supply disruptions, those spikes can get even more magnified. And that is something that calling in advance, I find that even our forecasting is not able to pinpoint when those disruptions are going to set in advance. And therefore, even though our average expectation that there will be a supply shock and there will be a food-led increase may be correct, the monthly timing of that is something that is difficult to identify in advance. Of course, the RBI would have much better systems than what we have as individual, forecasters in the market. But I would imagine that this is a quirk of our market in terms of our agricultural market that is going to be difficult to address.
Sure, fair enough, Aditi. We'll leave it at that. Appreciate your quick thoughts there. Essentially, just marking the appointment of Michael Patra, who, as we said, over as Deputy Governor and relinquishes his post as Executive Director. So the next point of speculation, Niraj, is going to be who takes over as ED from him, because that person will join the Monetary Policy Committee as well.
Yeah, the important one to monitor as well. Thanks for that, Aditi. Thanks for that, Ira. And, well, we wrap it up on this broadcast. Thanks so much for watching.